What if your final farewell wasn't a quiet, somber affair, but a vibrant, bizarre spectacle? Imagine a world where death wasn't just an end, but the beginning of an epic, ritual-filled journey. Cultures where the deceased were sent off on flaming ships or left on mountaintops as a final offering to the sky. We're about to unearth the most astonishing and sometimes unsettling ancient farewells rituals, so strange they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about death. Prepare to be amazed and perhaps a little disturbed. Did you know some ancient civilizations believed in burying their dead with live servants, or mummifying household pets to accompany their loved ones into the afterlife? These weren't just superstitions. They were profound acts of faith, love, and farewell. Join us as we discover the bizarre and beautiful ways humanity has grappled with its greatest mystery. From the moment humans first walked the earth, we've been obsessed with what comes next. The impulse to mark death, to give it meaning, is a universal thread woven through every culture in history. The earliest evidence we have, like the Neanderthal flower burials, shows a tender, almost poetic concern for the departed. Simple grave goods of favorite tool, a string of beads were placed with the body, suggesting a belief that the journey wasn't over. These humble acts of remembrance laid the foundation for some of the most elaborate and complex rituals the world has ever seen, creating a rich tapestry of human belief about the final journey. Let's venture into some of the most dramatic farewells in history. Picture the high, wind-swept plateaus of Tibet. Here, the practice of sky burial, or jeder, was not seen as macabre, but as a final act of generosity. The body of the deceased was taken to a specific location and offered to vultures. This was a profoundly spiritual act, embodying the Buddhist belief in the impermanence of the physical body and the cyclical nature of life. The soul had already moved on, and the body was simply an empty vessel, given back to nature to sustain other living creatures. It's a powerful, visceral ritual that challenges our modern sensibilities. Now, let's sail north to the land of the Vikings. For a great chieftain or a revered warrior, death was not an end, but a doorway to Valhalla. Their farewell was the legendary ship burial. The deceased was placed in a longship, surrounded by their most prized possessions: weapons, armor, tools, and sometimes even sacrificed animals and servants. The ship was then either buried under a massive earthen mound or, in the most spectacular cases, set ablaze and pushed out to sea. It was a funeral pyre fit for a hero, a fiery beacon sending the soul on its final voyage across the celestial ocean. Of course, no discussion of ancient burials is complete without visiting Egypt. The Egyptians developed mummification into a high art and a complex science, all driven by one core belief: the body must be preserved for the soul to recognize it in the afterlife. The process was meticulous. Organs were removed and stored in special containers called canopic jars, each guarded by a different god. The body was dried out with natron salt for 40 days, then wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen bandages with protective amulets tucked between the layers. Funerary texts, like the Book of the Dead, were included as a guidebook for the soul's perilous journey through the underworld. It was an incredibly sophisticated system, all designed to ensure eternal life. Meanwhile, the Romans had their own unique approach. They practiced ancestor worship, keeping wax masks of their departed family members, called imagines, in their homes. During a funeral for a prominent citizen, these masks were worn by actors who would participate in the procession, literally bringing the ancestors back to life to welcome the newly deceased. The procession itself was a grand public spectacle, with professional mourners wailing, musicians playing, and the family displaying their grief for all to see. It was theater, it was remembrance, and it was a powerful statement of family lineage and social status. The destination of the soul was just as varied as the funeral rites themselves. For the Aztecs, your afterlife wasn't determined by how you lived, but by how you died. Warriors who fell in battle and women who died in childbirth went to the paradise of the sun god, Huitzilopochtli. Those who drowned were destined for a watery paradise, ruled by the rain god, Tlaloc. And most others, they faced a challenging multi-year journey through Mictlan, the underworld. It was a complex spiritual geography, reflecting a worldview where death itself was an active, defining event. In ancient China, the connection to the departed never truly faded. Ancestral reverence was, and still is, a cornerstone of the culture. Families believed their ancestors could influence the fortunes of the living, so they made offerings of food, drink, and ghost money, special paper currency burned, to provide the deceased with wealth in the spirit world. It's a beautiful system of reciprocity, ensuring that loved ones are cared for and remembered long after they've passed, maintaining a bond that transcends the veil of death. Perhaps the most famous ancient afterlife is the Greek underworld, Hades. The journey there was a well-defined path. The soul, led by Hermes, had to cross the river Styx. But passage wasn't free. The ferryman Charon demanded payment to coin, which was why the Greeks often placed a coin in the mouth of the deceased. This practice, known as Charon's obol, was a practical preparation for a mythological journey, a tangible act to ensure the soul wouldn't be left wandering the shores of the living for eternity. Mourning itself was often a structured, public performance. In ancient Greece, families hired professional mourners, women who would lead the lamentations, tearing at their hair and singing sorrowful dirges. These weren't just expressions of personal grief, they were a required social ritual, a way for the community to process the loss together and show respect for the dead. Similarly, the Celts had a tradition of waking the dead. But this wasn't a somber, quiet vigil. It was a lively gathering, filled with feasting, drinking, storytelling, and games. The goal was to celebrate the life of the person who had passed, to honor their memory with joy and companionship, and to provide comfort to the grieving through community. It was a way of defying the sadness of death with the vibrancy of life. Over time, these rituals of remembrance evolved into more permanent markers. Like the gravestones and epitaphs we see today, each one a final story etched in stone. So what can we learn from these forgotten farewells? They reveal so much about the worldviews, fears, and deepest hopes of our ancestors. They show us that while technologies and beliefs have changed, the core human need to find meaning in mortality remains the same. The sky burials return to nature, the Vikings' voyage to glory. The Egyptians' quest for eternities are all different answers to the same fundamental questions we still ask today. The surprising parallels between ancient and modern rituals, from community gatherings to memorializing the dead, show us that we are still connected to these ancient traditions. They remind us that the human quest to understand and cope with our final journey is, and always has been, one of the most profound and creative parts of our shared story. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found these ancient rituals as fascinating as we do, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history's forgotten corners. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.